Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank, coming to you virtually from Seattle and the great Pacific Northwest. Listen, if you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, this right here, it's the podcast for you. This is where we say street smarts and book smarts collide. Hello again, everyone. I'm Dan Whedon. My co-host today is Michelle Baumberger, and because of a last-minute illness with our guest who we have rescheduled for January, Michelle and I are going to wax poetic about the year we just had and the year coming up. We hope you'll enjoy. Before we do, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube. And I just learned from Craig Swanson, what was it? I forgot what it was. I'll come up with it again. It has something to do with clouds. Anyway, I'll figure it out. I just lost it. Oh, Overcast. That was it. Overcast. That's what happens when I go off script, Michelle. I completely lose it. But anyway, everybody, please like us, subscribe us, tell us what you think, give us 5 stars, all of that stuff. Today, Michelle, the incomparable Michelle Baumberger, is joining us today as co-host. But as it turns out, Michelle, unfortunately, we had a husband and wife couple. They both came down sick as we head out of the year, and we didn't want to do that to them. So we've rescheduled Rufina and Roger Holcomb for January. You and I are just we're gonna wax poetic a little bit. We're gonna talk. How are you doing?
Good. I think these 2 weeks are always a challenge because they're short weeks and you're trying to figure out like how much work you should be doing and how much work, you should kind of put off until the new year. I would love to have this week be a lot more focused on getting stuff done. But I feel pretty distracted with the holidays and family and all those other things going on.
Michelle, I'm actually very glad you said that, because I always feel that way at this time of year, and I thought it was just me. Are you saying that even you get a little distracted this time of year?
I'm super distracted this time of year. I try to figure out, interestingly, the idea of closing the office between Christmas and New Year's, right? Yeah. In a business that is so, focused on customer service, customer needs, and sometimes those needs are, immediate and demanding and urgent. How would one in a business like ours actually close between Christmas and New Year's? So it's something that we've contemplated and tried to kind of figure out whether that would work. And are there people who are happy to be on call? What does that look like?
Haven't you found though that your clients are all kind of doing this? It's all the same thing. I'm not even sure I could reach anybody, and it almost seems like it's not emergencies this time, but there are time sensitive things, but it's still on a different pace. Would you agree?
It's definitely on a different pace. There's definitely, I think, fewer people who are available, fewer people who are working. But I also, it's really about setting expectations. And that is something we did this year. We knew we were going to be fairly short-staffed at the end of the year. People are traveling a ton more than I think they have been over the last few years, of course. And so we kind of set the expectation that our monthly standing meetings that we have with clients, if they fell during this.
Oh, see, this is what happens when we do live broadcasts. Oh, Michelle, you came back.
Now I'm back.
You're back.
I'm sorry about that. That's never happened before.
Apparently, the internet is taking a little time off sometimes too.
Evidently. So we did set expectations with clients that we would be, shorter staff. Let's move any standing meetings away from this week. And I do think that's a big part of it, is just setting the expectations with folks that, we're going to be less available. And maybe that helps.
Yeah. Well, I have one other distractions coming up at the end of the week. I have my next birthday. I'm inching closer to a important one. I'm in the fourth quarter of the 50s. I'll hit 58, And so that's at the end of the week, and it's Saturday. And I long ago set a tee time. I said, I'm going to play Saturday no matter what the weather is. Now, if it was snowing like it was last week, I don't think they'd let me play, but it looks like it's going to be perfect weather. So that'll be my my plans for Saturday.
Well, happy early birthday.
Thank
and
you.
Happy New Year.
Same to you. Hey, speaking of that, we talked before this, what we would we talk about. I want to talk a little bit about you and about Equinox and kind of the year in review. And the reason is that about halfway through the year, if memory serves correct, you made an intentional, thoughtful, I don't want to say shift, but a brand change that I know and I only knew that because we changed your ad read, but there was a little bit of a different focus. And I'd like to just interview you a little bit on how long was that in the works? What spurred that decision? And how are you as Equinox different now than you were before?
There's a lot of questions there.
There's three questions. See, this is what happens when you're not on the interviewing side of the microphone. You got to keep those all together. So let me see if I've got those right. How long were you planning it? What was the what was the impetus? What moved you to do it? And what makes you different?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone here who's had business, anyone here who's kind of worked on branding knows that it's not a single, stage process. Like branding just goes on forever, and it shifts and moves as you learn more about your business, how you learn more about your customers. So, going back many, many years, we started out as small business legal services back in 2005 and did a full brand shift in 2010, maybe, to Equinox. The idea with Equinox was the balancing of business and law. It took us out of being a small business solution and kind of a broader audience. So that was important from a messaging standpoint. And we have kind of really worked that balancing of business and law over the years. Something that we decided about a year and a half ago was to really focus on our general counsel services. Our general counsel services is a unique model where business owners have access to legal as though they had a general counsel on staff. So everything from research to negotiation to drafting to strategic thinking, all the things that a general counsel does for a big company, we do that for smaller businesses on a fractional basis and on a fixed fee. So it gives people that takes them away from the
meter's not running.
The constant worry about, is it worth it to call this time? Is it worth the $1,500 bill or the $500 bill or the $3,000 bill? We can kind of figure it out. We're smart people. Well, what if you were just paying a fixed price to send us everything? Then legal becomes strategic, right? So we made a decision about a year and a half ago to really only focus on the general counsel and kind of remove the time and materials model, the traditional model. And so that prompted the question of, how do we speak to that audience in a clearer voice? What is the value proposition? And again, we've worked on this for years. I mean, we've had numerous, marketing consultants, numerous iterations of this. But who is that audience? And so starting in last November, a year ago, we started working with a firm called Bricks and Matter, BAMCO, they could buy, and thinking about who are we and who do we serve. And they've actually been a really great solutions provider for us in that for the first time, we feel like we've got a partner who really understands our model. So that got us to testing, kind of real-time testing of the Equinox Business Law Group, which is what we've always been, to different taglines. So that's where you see here the strategic legal counsel for all. That was a shift. And then the messaging around the freedom and confidence for entrepreneurs to go boldly into the unknown. So we've kind of shifted that go boldly piece. Like, what are we giving them? We're giving them the freedom and the confidence to make decisions quickly and to have resources to be able to help them do so.
So really, what you did is it's not necessarily it was more of a focused look at what you're doing with the general counsel, but you are marrying up your marketing, your branding to what that focus was, so that it's clearer for potential clients. Is that a pretty good summary?
Yeah, you said it a lot shorter than I did.
Well, no, that's and I think it's important because as we dive into 2023, part of this time of year, whether it's slow or not, I like to try to think I'm putting some thought into strategic planning. Even no matter if you're a one-person organization or you have hundreds of employees, what you did was very strategic. It was thoughtful. It was, you brought in an expert to help with you on that, and it paid dividends. And I think as we look forward, I guess before we look forward, as you look back, Michelle, if there was somebody out there listening who was thinking about some similar type of strategic branding planning, what tips do you have to take it from the idea standpoint into execution?
I think recognizing that it's an iterative process, that it's not a once and done sort of activity. And then I think the other piece that's learning is all of the execution elements that are separate from the strategy elements, right? Yeah. So we have, and I pulled this up in kind of preparation for our call today, our brand guide, which has all of the, the colors and the logos and the messaging and the imagery, all of that. But then how do we take that and put it into practice? We've done a couple of things this year. One is we've always done newsletter. We've done a newsletter monthly for as long as I can remember. We've done blogs regularly for as long as I can remember. But how do we, get that persona of the business, the persona of the customer incorporated into all that in a meaningful way? And right now that has to be me. How do we get that into somebody else's hands? The folks at BAMCO really get it as well. Do we have them do it? Do we hire somebody to do it? So that execution, I think, is really, really tough. And figuring out. You
added videos, a lot of videos. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You've added maybe more than what I've seen before, where you are there speaking on a topic of importance, and you're now doing these regular videos. Was that part of the iteration?
Well, I'll give you a little behind the curtain view on that. I had created this video series as a program I offered for Entrepreneurs Organization, and they call it Nano Learning. And so the Nano Learning series has a dozen or so 1 to 3 minute videos with a workbook that goes behind it. And I took that because I think it's incredibly valuable. It talks about legal infrastructure in all parts of your business. And so we self-branded that, and then took each of those videos and put them into the newsletter this year as a different episode for each. Now we've used all 12 of them. So now what do we do?
Now you got to make new ones
next year. And those were professionally done. So can I do them more, off the cuff, ad hoc? Because I think there's great content to be created. And then the other thing on the execution side, as you mentioned, is, okay, we do have this great content, right? We have the workbook, we have the videos. Can we leverage those in different ways, right? Can we productize it, or can we pull snippets out of it and use those on social? Because we have it. And if we have it, what else can we do? And this goes back to who owns that in the company, right? Who has the both creativity and the ability to think about the brand in that way? I have pieces of it, but I certainly am not the brand guru or the marketing guru. So we're still struggling with who does this stuff, and how can we leverage all of this content and build more?
Well, it's amazing. We're going to take a break here in a second, but I've gone through a very similar process with content, and I think there may come a day if somebody new pops into my life that say, "Hey, what do you do?" I think I'm just going to say, I want to say I'm a content creator. And there's a bunch of stuff I create content on, but that's what I do. That's what I like to do, is to create content just like this podcast. And Michelle, as you know, we're gonna have to pay the bills, and we're gonna take a short break to hear from Spotlight sponsor, who I think you might know about. And we're going to do that. We're not going to do hot or not coming out of it, but we will talk a little bit about what's coming up in 2023. So the power of law is often used against those who don't know what they don't know, but not anymore. Equinox levels the field for entrepreneurs. Just as your business now may tap into managed service providers for accounting, HR, or IT help, you can now tap into the power of law with Equinox. Equinox's strategic legal counsel service gives your business the same strategic law advantages as the megacorps. But unlike the mega attorneys, Equinox brings a balance of strategic business and practical legal guidance. You set the priorities in the budget. The Equinox team builds a personalized plan at a fixed monthly cost to best serve your legal priorities and needs. Take on business complexities with the power of law on your team. Visit equinoxbusinesslaw.com. Schedule a complimentary, no obligation evaluation to see where your business stands. Level the playing field with Equinox Strategic Legal Counsel. And what I will say on the back end of that, Michelle, is I've known you. I'm actually thinking it's like got to be at 10 years or something that I've known you, and I know from a couple of the mutual clients that we have, and just watching your practice, your business, your team is outstanding. What you do for small businesses is exemplary. And anybody out there listening that's a small business, mid-sized business, you need a legal counsel, because all of, as you said, all of that is important, and it needs to be strategic. And you should be calling Michelle and her team. So there you go.
Well, thanks, Dan.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that.
So let's talk 2023. I'm doing some planning. I'll share with you a little bit about some of the things that I'm looking at. I want you to share maybe with what you guys are doing over there, and then maybe we can give some words of advice to those who haven't either haven't started the planning, or it's in the resolution phase, because I have a theory on resolutions. But as I said, I'm starting to create more content. And one of the things that you said before break resonated with me, and what I'm trying to do is, how do you take the stuff that's in your head, the stuff that you know, and scale it better? Because really what came out of COVID for me was, how do I scale what I know to a larger degree, so that I don't need to have because I have a capacity level. You only have a certain amount of time for a certain number of clients. How do you do that? And so I kind of figured out, based off of the LinkedIn learning courses that I did, that some are as long ago as 5 years, and I'm still bringing revenue from them. And they've been in the can, so to speak, for a while. And so it brought up, why can't I create something for small and medium-sized business owners? And so I've been working on online courses, online course creation. Some of it is free. I've got one out right now on cyber insurance explained. It's free. So I'm going to create some of these free ones, but then I'm going to create some of these other courses that can be certified, get people certificated in risk management to make them look more attractive to insurance companies. So I'm really looking at upping the content creation part of what I do. Plus, I like it. It's fun. It's what I like to do. So that's what you're going to be seeing more from me in 2023. What can we expect from Equinox?
I want to just add on to that. I mean, I think one of the skills that you have is the ability to translate some of that technical into the creative, and really kind of talk to business owners about, things that are, definitely back burner, definitely things I'm just never going to get to, even though I know they're important, and bring those forward in a really meaningful way. And I think that's a talent that you have and have had over the years, as you've expanded from, the different kind of pieces of the world. As cybersecurity, as you mentioned, has become, so forefront, which when we first met, it was not something that, people spent much time on.
Right.
And now it's one of the top things that folks need to know that they need.
Right.
And fantastic job of bringing that forward. And I think you're a fantastic storyteller. I mean, if you look at, your books and your writing, all that I think plays into your ability to sort of, as you mentioned, have all of this in your head. And then how do we get it out into the world? And how do we scale it? So I think it's
thank
really,
you.
really great space for you to play in. So it's exciting to hear.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. What's going to be on the forefront for Equinox? I mean, you shared a little bit about kind of the brand shift. Now I'm guessing it is really kind of a laser focus on finding clients that fit into your area. But what other type of content do you think is going to be going out in 2023?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the other initiative that we tackled last year, well, 2022, this year, was around what are the economic drivers of the business and what are the metrics we should be paying attention to for this managed services sort of environment. So the way that our model works is similar to your IT managed services solution. It's a fixed price for all of this. It's not a bucket of hours. And so that's really important. So what are the right ways to manage the business? So that was another thing that we really spent some time on, bringing in an outsourced CFO type person to really help us understand that. So going into 2023, what we know is that it is a valuable product. So when people sign up, they stay. And we know that it works financially. So we know we can make it work. At this point, we need to figure out how to scale it. We need to figure out how to go from 25 clients on our general counsel solution to 50. And a lot of that is process. And so we have been working really hard at documenting what we do and building the project management team. So in order to make this kind of wheel turn seamlessly, we need to have the attorneys doing their work, but we need all this sort of project management behind the scenes for each of these, 6-month fixed price contracts to be able to make sure that both parties are getting value. The client is getting real value from the solution, and that it's also working for us. And so that's a balance. And we have a project management team to do that. So building out that infrastructure is the biggest initiative that we have, and then building that team of project managers and lawyers who can collaborate to deliver this seamless service to clients.
It's funny, I smile because I don't know that I've ever been in a conversation where the attorneys and project managers are melded together in the same sentence. But it's not the old, it's not LA law. I mean, this is really what you're doing is you're setting up a team structure, a partner structure with your clients, but you've got to do it on the back end. You've got to do it within kind of the logistical part of what you're doing so that it works out great for them as well. And there's planning involved.
There's planning and there's management, and what does each part of the team need to understand about the other in order to make it work. I think on the customer facing side, it's really about why law matters. And, so much of people's experience and learning is that legal is an expense to be minimized at all costs. Like, it is an expense. And the number of times, like, I just hope I don't have to call you. Like, no, you need to call me. You need to call me all the time, which is why in our system we have a project plan, and then we have monthly face-to-face meetings. What's happening now? What's come up on your radar? And it might be, hey, we're thinking about firing this person and we're kind of worried about doing so, or we're looking at moving our operations to Mexico. What does that look like? Or, we want to get out of our lease. That's a really common thing right now. How do we get out of that really expensive lease that we're not using? And so we have that, what's coming up next, and we can have those strategic conversations as well as the tactical, as well as the firefighting. And so how do we take the new branding message about going boldly and that confidence and that freedom, and translate that into what's on their mind and why strategic is needed in addition to the tactical and firefighting. And so that's where I think a lot of the content will go this year.
Well, that's fantastic. So I'm going to throw out a plead the fifth to you here, though. We're going to a little shift. We're going to talk about things for our audience. So plead the fifth, Michelle Baumberger. Why is it that you think so many New Year's resolutions, whether they be personal or business, why do they start fizzling out about mid-January?
Welcome to every resolution that I've ever made. So if I knew the why, I might be more successful. I think for me, it's always the question of, if I really cared, it would be done. It wouldn't be a resolution, it would be a habit, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of creating the habit because it matters, there's got to be sort of that end game, and whether, and I think you go to the classic, get healthier, eat better,
Yeah.
weight loss. I mean, why does January 1st make a difference?
See, we were going to go into my theories. So now we're just gonna now bounce ideas off of each other. See, I think that's part of the problem is we hit the calendar and we're kind of in this, as we said, that we're kind of in this weird time that of distraction. And it's like, okay, in 2023, starting January 1st, we're now going, it's like Fat Tuesday going into Mardi Gras, right? Or going into Lent for those Catholics like me. It's like the Fat Tuesday going into Lent. Now, starting here, I'm going to be, and that becomes, I think, a problem because if it was that important, you would have started it, November 11th or whatever that date was. The other issue I think comes around accountability and who is holding you accountable, and time management. So one of the things I did, knowing that content was going to be something I needed to do, I'm really good at getting distracted, Michelle. There's some Captain Jack in me still, where the squirrel will pop up and things happen. So I set aside Tuesday. Tuesday is Content Creation Tuesday. And I've actually gone to the level that you couldn't go on my Calendly now and book a time with me between, I think, 8 o'clock and like 2 o'clock, I think afternoon. But between that time, I have blocked it out because I am committed to, that's the day I'm going to create stuff. It would have to be some sort of emergency for it to move me out of that. And I think, we can all, whether it's exercise or eat, whatever it is, my accountability is I've got an accountability group. I've got a mastermind group of other solo entrepreneurs, and we hold each other accountable. And so I think those two things. I think
that's I'm going to say it's a great observation, because I think, the blocking the calendar is great, until like that blocking gets filled up with other things and that's, my history is like, there's other things that are more important. Well, but they're not more important. They're more urgent potentially, but not more important. And you've probably seen The Matrix, right?
Oh yeah.
The level of urgency and level of importance. And, you've got to be able to define that and then respect that space. And it sounds like you have multiple tools in place to help you respect that space.
Yeah. And, one was a mind shift. And this was several years ago. One of the, I worked a lot in the past with Alan Weiss, and one of the things he told me, he said, look, you have to, if you put something down like that, that's a client meeting. You're the client. And he said, the problem is that we don't look at ourselves as clients. We can break dates and appointments with us very easily. But if we would never do that to a client. And so it was really, I kind of had to trick myself in a sense and say, hey, I'm doing this for my clients or for potential clients. And I'm not going, in order to do that, I've got to set aside the time. So that just became a mindset for me, thinking of I'm the client, and especially with content creation, there's potential clients out there that if they don't see this or hear it or read it because I didn't create it, then they'll never know who I was.
Yeah, without a doubt, I think that's a good way to look at it, is I am the client. I think the other piece that is important for me is learning to say no to things, right? Learning to prioritize the things that are necessary and say no to the things or push them out, right? Those networking meetings, those coffees, those conversations, while it's easy again to put the Calendly out there and allow people to choose next week, well, why don't we have them choose 3 weeks out, right? How important is this meeting? Is it, and some of them are, but I think I tend toward allowing those things to impinge upon that protected time and not do the work that needs to be done.
Perfect. Well, we got one really brief segment after. We're going to talk about the podcast for next year and what we might be looking forward to. But before we do, let's take a quick short break to hear from our corporate sponsors. We will not have Plead the Fifth today, but we do want to highlight these sponsors. They've all locked in for another year and really appreciate them. Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, BC Fitness Studio, and Upstart Group. Please check out our website at www.shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. So, Michelle, I know I've got some thoughts on the podcast in 2023. What are you looking forward to as we embark on another year of podcasts?
I think that the interesting stories are really what drive me on this podcast. What I love are not just the entrepreneurial stories, but the personal stories that come behind that. All of us who are entrepreneurs are here because of life circumstances, right? Something somewhere, took us down that path. And the story of that journey, to me, is the most kind of compelling parts of what we get out of this show.
I agree. One of the questions that I tend to ask a lot, because I find it every answer fascinating, is what would you tell your 18-year-old self? Because, now here, that's now 40 years ago for me, but, that's 40 years of different experiences, some epic failures to some successes and all of that. And it's amazing as I look back, because next year's my 40-year high school reunion. As I look back, I mean, when I was 18, 40 years in and of itself, if you were 40 years old, you were like ancient. It's amazing the perspective that I would have given to that young 18-year-old Dan Whedon, just because you've been humbled a little bit and you've had so many different things happen.
I have an 18-year-old at home who's, back from his first semester at college and talking about, summer internships and kind of that, trying to think about that place in life where, you ask a question like, well, what are you looking to get out of it? And it's like, well, just experience. Okay, well, how do we narrow that down? How do we focus that so that you're getting something that is valuable to you where you are in your life, right? How do we ask those questions without the 18-year-old being a little frustrated with the fact that you're asking too many questions?
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you. We're going to end the year on a Plead the Fifth. I'll answer it as well, although it's not quite pleading the fifth when I know the question.
You know the answer to the questions.
So here I'm going to ask you, Michelle. What would you say to an 18-year-old Michelle back when you were 18, knowing what you know today? You jumped in Back to the Future. You jumped in the DeLorean. What advice would you give yourself?
I think I would really share the importance of knowing yourself, because that is something that I feel I have learned very late. I consider myself, I'm not a self-helpy kind of person, right? I just kind of power through, get things done. And only in the last, I think, few years have I kind of put some time into how I feel about things, how I react to things, why I behave the way I do. And I think that could be a much more valuable way to live from, early on, and investing in those tools and knowing myself better earlier, I think would be incredibly helpful.
I think that's highly. I couldn't agree with you more. Mine would be that failure not only isn't fatal, but it's important, and that failure is not a bad thing. It's how we learn, and it also doesn't speak to who you are as a human. that it doesn't draw, the identity of who you are is not based on your failures. And so I think that maybe when we're 18, at least for me, failure was a terrible thing, and it was to be avoided at all costs. And I think I've learned over the years, it's some of my best successes have come because I failed somewhere along the line. So I think that would have been it for me. So anyway, listen, Michelle, I'll go ahead and take us out from here. I want to thank you personally here for not only being a fantastic co-host and sponsor of the show, you become a good friend, and I can't wait to hear more from you and all the guests on your show moving forward in 2023. Wishing you a very happy new year.
Happy New Year as well. And I look forward to sharing so many more episodes with you and this Shrimp Tank journey together.
Sounds great. All right, everybody else, listen, we're going to be back in our next show in 2023. Craig Swanson is going to be the co-host, and I'm really excited for this one. Wednesday, January 4th at noon, our guest will be Daniel Marinello with Seattle Golf Fitness. I'm ready to get fit for golf right now. When it's January, I've got my own golf resolutions. Maybe I'll share them with Daniel. So please join us Wednesday, January 4th, 12 p.m. on our Facebook page. Again, for Michelle and for all of the co-hosts, Linda Popke and Craig Swanson, thank you for watching this year. Come back again next year, because right now, I'm asking you to be safe, be well, and be prosperous, because until next year and just next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp